We live in a world where scrolling has become almost as automatic as breathing. A simple swipe can take us through the lives of hundreds of strangers, friends, and acquaintances, each carefully curated snapshot often designed to show the very best of their existence. Yet, while social media promises connection, information, and entertainment, it has also quietly become a magnifying glass for our insecurities. Understanding why this happens isn't just about criticizing an app or blaming technology, it's about understanding ourselves, our psychological patterns, and the emotional vulnerabilities that social media taps into so effortlessly. At the core of this phenomenon is the deep human need for social comparison. Psychologists have long studied the ways in which we evaluate our own worth by measuring ourselves against others. This is not inherently negative. Social comparison can be motivating, helping us set goals, strive for achievement, or navigate social norms. But in the digital world, these comparisons are relentless, carefully curated, and often unrealistic. A friend's post about their flawless vacation, a colleague's promotion, or a stranger's seemingly perfect body does not show the effort, struggle, or compromise behind the image, it shows the highlight reel. And our brains, wired to absorb these images as reality, can easily interpret them as standards we must meet. This constant comparison feeds into a familiar psychological trap, the cycle of inadequacy. When we see someone who appears to have it all, it triggers a cascade of self-evaluation. Am I enough? Why can't I do that? What is wrong with me? These questions are not idle curiosities, they are the echoes of our emotional response systems in action. Our brains are sensitive to social standing, and our limbic systems, which govern emotion, are designed to respond strongly to signals of social success or failure. On social media, success is distilled into likes, comments, and followers, quantifiable markers that can make us feel validated one moment and insignificant the next. Developmentally, these insecurities often have roots that extend far beyond the screen. Early experiences of validation or criticism, parental expectations, and peer acceptance shape the way we perceive our worth. Children who grow up in environments where praise is conditional or where comparison is frequent may internalize the belief that love or respect must be earned. Later in life, social media becomes a mirror reflecting these long-held beliefs back at us, often magnified. A notification becomes more than just a ping, it becomes a subtle test of our adequacy. And because social media interactions are immediate, repetitive, and measurable, the reinforcement or lack thereof can deeply affect self-esteem. Our emotional responses to these comparisons are complex. There's a cocktail of envy, longing, shame, and self-criticism that can emerge from even a few minutes of scrolling. Interestingly, these responses are often unconscious. We might tell ourselves we are just checking in, but beneath the surface, our brains are running a narrative. I am lacking. I am falling behind. I am not enough. Cognitive psychologists would describe this as a pattern of automatic negative thoughts, ingrained, habitual mental responses that shape our perception of reality, often without conscious awareness. Over time, these thoughts can contribute to chronic stress, anxiety, and even depressive tendencies. Behaviorally, these insecurities manifest in subtle but pervasive ways. We might over-edit our own photos, selectively share our achievements, or hesitate to post for fear of judgment. We may check our phones compulsively, searching for signs of approval, or scroll late into the night, trying to measure ourselves against an endless stream of curated lives. These behaviors are not mere habits, they are adaptive responses that our brains have learned in response to the stimuli of social media. Like any habit, they are reinforced each time we experience a surge of dopamine from a like, a comment, or a share. The temporary relief feels rewarding, but the underlying insecurity remains, waiting for the next scroll to trigger it again. Importantly, these responses are not uniform. Personality traits, attachment styles, and emotional resilience all play a role. People with high levels of neuroticism may experience more intense social comparison, while those with secure attachment histories may approach social media more objectively. Those with perfectionistic tendencies might feel chronic dissatisfaction, while individuals prone to rumination may replay comparisons in their minds long after they have logged off. Understanding our own patterns requires reflection and self-awareness, because only by observing our habitual responses can we begin to disentangle them from the external triggers that provoke them. But there is another layer at work here, one that is more subtle and insidious. Social media doesn't just expose us to others' lives, it actively shapes the way we perceive ourselves. Platforms are engineered to keep us engaged, and engagement often thrives on emotional arousal, fear of missing out, envy, outrage, or desire. Every algorithmic choice is designed to present content that will capture attention, often prioritizing content that triggers strong emotional responses over content that is calming or neutral. In this sense, our insecurities are not accidental, they are amplified by design. The platforms capitalize on our psychological vulnerabilities, encouraging constant comparison, and feeding the very emotional responses that make scrolling irresistible. Yet, acknowledging these influences is not a cause for despair. Awareness itself can be transformative. By recognizing the ways in which social media interacts with our insecurities, we gain the power to respond rather than react. Mindfulness techniques, for example, encourage us to observe our emotional responses without judgment. Instead of internalizing a sense of inadequacy from someone else's post, we can notice the feeling, label it, and return to our own priorities. Cognitive reframing allows us to reinterpret comparisons, seeing posts not as a measure of our worth, but as glimpses into the curated lives of others, partial truths, not reality. Self-compassion is another crucial tool. Often, we are our harshest critics, measuring ourselves against standards we would never impose on others. By cultivating kindness toward ourselves, we begin to break the cycle of shame and self-judgment. This might involve affirmations, journaling, or simply taking time to appreciate our own achievements, however small. Importantly, it requires patience. Emotional habits that have developed over years cannot be undone overnight, but they can be reshaped through consistent practice. Behaviorally, we can also create environments that support healthier engagement. This might mean curating feeds to include more authentic, inspiring, or educational content, setting intentional limits on scrolling, or engaging in offline activities that reinforce self-worth through real-life experiences rather than digital validation. Social media does not need to disappear from our lives, but its influence can be moderated when we actively choose how and when to engage. Ultimately, the psychology of why social media feeds our insecurities is not a story about technology, it's a story about the human mind. It is a story of how we seek connection, validation, and understanding, and how these basic needs can sometimes collide with the curated perfection of online spaces. It is a story of our emotional brains, of our habitual thought patterns, and of the deeply human desire to belong. By understanding these dynamics, we can approach social media with empathy for ourselves, recognizing that our reactions are natural and understandable, not evidence of personal failure. In embracing this awareness, there is room for hope. Healing is possible not by eliminating social media, but by reclaiming our attention, recalibrating our comparisons, and nurturing our own sense of worth independent of likes or follows. We can learn to scroll with intention, to pause and reflect rather than react, and to celebrate the uniqueness of our own experiences. Over time, this conscious engagement transforms our relationship with the digital world, turning what once amplified insecurity into an opportunity for self-awareness and growth. The path is gradual, requiring reflection, self-compassion, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable emotions without judgment. But each step toward understanding our own patterns is a step toward freedom, the freedom to engage with the world, both online and offline, without losing sight of our intrinsic value. In this journey, we learn that our worth is not determined by curated snapshots or fleeting metrics, but by the depth of our self-knowledge, the authenticity of our relationships, and the compassion we extend to ourselves each day. And so, the next time you find yourself scrolling, take a moment to notice the feelings that arise. Observe them with curiosity rather than critique. Understand that these reactions are deeply human, rooted in psychology, and entirely normal. And then, gently redirect your attention, whether to something you create, a connection you nurture, or a thought you reflect upon. In doing so, you reclaim the narrative, transforming social media from a mirror of insecurity into a tool for awareness, growth, and self-compassion.